Hi, I'm Debbie Roberts. I'm owner of Healthy Living Spa at Massage and Fitness Professionals in Stuart, Florida. Today I'm going to show you how I use the CranioCradle in my practice. Now we're going to use the CranioCradle in base position. Base position is one of the best positions you can use to help the client start to relax. Instead of a pillow or towel rolls, it's comfortable. You can see it supports the cervical spine. You're teaching the client how they could go home and use this at home. It's easy for a therapist to just simply relax the jaw muscles or relax the forehead. If the client is experiencing lots of headaches, you might want to go ahead and bring the CranioCradle up into stillness position. In stillness position, if you were a trained craniosacral therapist, you could also go through your 10-step protocol. But in just a regular massage therapist, it gives you even more room to work on the cervical spine. From this position, simply place the CranioCradle under the occipital ridge, and you can have the client rock back and forth. It gives a nice, easy, gentle traction to the neck. They feel much more supported by having something underneath their neck than just using your hands. Next great position I like to use to work on trigger points is move the CranioCradle down the spine. About mid-trap, right into the rhomboids, you can work on some trigger points. Depending on the comfort of the client, you could also turn the CranioCradle around. Just make sure that the spine is directly in the center of the CranioCradle and that the client is comfortable. From that position, you could simply traction and get a nice stretch from the traps, rhomboids, all the way up to the occiput. Now, I'd like to use the thoracic opening. To get a nice large thoracic opening, you could use two. You can also just use one depending on how warmed up you've done with the client and how much they're rounded in the front. The more rounded they are, the more thoracic opening you might want to have. As you can see, we might even want to work a little bit on her right shoulder. One of the things I really like to use the CranioCradle for is if someone's suffering from shoulder impingement. You'll see a higher shoulder on the table. The client can simply just vary right in between those scapulas, and they'll breathe, and those shoulders will just fall back to the table. It'll take about 10 minutes, and that every single time helps with shoulder impingement. Now we're going to use the CranioCradle to open up the lumbar. So I'm going to have the client, if you notice, it's shaped just like the sacrum, and I'm going to have the client lift up. And if I don't quite get it placed properly, we're going to ask them to make sure that it's comfortable. Here we can open up from L5 to S1, and they just simply breathe and relax. There's 3 different positions, and we use positioning for comfort. So if that position was not comfortable, we would also be able to turn it around with the bump side up, allow them once again to let their pelvis relax. It opens up, L5, S1, and they just do some breathing. Another position that is awesome for the patient is to turn it so that you're in a sacral stillness position, and later you could combine that with the cervical. I retail and use the CranioCradle every day in my practice.